that not a lot of people knew the entire story of what happened surrounding that Bible, or why that Bible was so important to the local history. But not more than 2 miles from here, not more than 2 miles from where we are tonight, the event occurred that would make that Bible famous locally. If you wanted to get there, it's an unmarked spot, but if you wanted to get there, you would continue west on 55 until you get to the Aranda Road, the road that runs through to Aranda. You would turn right at the Shiloh Church and head toward Aranda. Go a mile or so down there, and Beeler Lane would be on your left. If you make a left turn into Beeler Lane, just about behind the third house on the right, there's an old house that's fallen down, the windows are out of it. Right directly beyond that house in the field stood the cabin where the Miller family lived and resided in the 1700s. Now there is a graveyard there. When you drive in there, you have to be careful, or you should walk in, as a matter of fact. But there are gravestones there that date back to the period that this event occurred. Both the old house, and there's a barn there, you kind of go between the two, and they're both in a little bit of bad state of repair, but but that doesn't take away from the fact that the graves are still there, and you can see a number of stones. There are more than 4 graves, as a matter of fact. As I said, at the time of this occurrence, this was the home of the George Miller family. And I don't want to tell the whole story, because the guy I'm going to introduce to you is the guy that is going to tell you much more than I would have known. But back to the Bible. The story of this Bible is related from what we would consider one of the earliest historians in the area, Samuel Kercheval. And everybody that studies local history has heard of and is very well acquainted with Samuel Kercheval. He and 2 of his daughters are buried in the cemetery at Fort Bowman. You'll hear more about Fort Bowman in a few moments. Samuel Kercheval lived in the 1820s, 30s, and lived in Frederick County generally, passing away I think about 1840 in Middletown, and was then buried there at the Bowman Cemetery. He recorded the story of this event in his work, The History of Shenandoah County, or The History of Shenandoah. History of the Valley is the name. And I'm going to read his passage that tells just a little about that. And he says, there was a guy that lived near the spot of this event by the name of Mr. Thomas Newell. Could not have been far away, within hearing range of gunshots. Okay? Hearing the firing, he instantly took his rifle and ran to see what it meant. When he arrived at the spot, he found Miller, his wife, and 2 children welting in their blood and still bleeding. They went inside the house, and on the sill of the door lay a large folio German Bible, on which a fresh killed cat was thrown. On taking up the Bible, it was discovered that the fire had been placed in it, but after burning through a few leaves, the weight of that part of the book which lay uppermost, together with the weight of the cat, had so compressed the leaves as to smother and extinguish the fire. So the Bible was preserved. That is that Bible. And there are cat blood stains in that Bible, as a matter of fact. The The Bible itself was preserved by the Miller family, finally being in the possession of a John Miller who lived in another old Miller home that was adjacent to the site of the affair. On October 18, 1959, Mr. Miller, being of very advanced age and having no descendants, gave that Bible to the First Bank of Strasburg for safekeeping, and they maintained it there for years, it being on display in the vault, on display in the lobby on various occasions, but generally kept in the vault. On April 19, 2013, that Bible was donated by the First Bank, which had assumed possession to the Strasburg Museum under the guise that it was intended to have been placed in the museum, but of course had been given to the bank prior to the establishment of the museum, and so it was held until the museum acquired it. During the late days of 2018 and into 19, the museum took on that project of restoring that Bible. At that time, they advised us that it ought not be displayed open. You can open it and you can look at it, and it's a beautiful book, 1833. It has color, hence the name Folio Bible, and it's a very ornate book and worth your examination. Be sure you see that before you go home. During the period the museum's open, the Bible is displayed on the lower floor, and of course when the museum is closed for the season, the Bible is returned to the vault at the First Bank, and they keep it there and protect it there in the vault. Now, the guy that I'm going to introduce to you is a nephew of a boy that graduated with me, a bright guy, really was. But this guy has it together. Now this guy is where is he? Here he is. Neil Thorne has researched this entire event to an extent that it would be beyond me to present to you, but he can, and he will do a wonderful job. Now, at the end of this, I wish you all could crowd toward the front, because he has made a video that I think you'll enjoy. But he is going to tell you the story. There's a whole lot more to this. We call it the Indian Massacre, but he's going to call it something else. And so I'm going to turn it over to Neil, and I'm going to enjoy the presentation as well.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah.
So this began as one of several projects, started about 3 years ago, to help tell forgotten and obscure local history. I was working with Gloria Stickley, Hope Bram, and Cheryl Lyon on the Fisher's Hill Ladies Project, and showed them an early edit of this video I'm about to show you. Gloria Stickley told me Richard Kleese and the museum were planning to unveil the newly restored Miller Bible. Of course, a few things happened in the past years and it got delayed. And she asked me if I knew him. And I said, yeah, he's my accountant. So probably half the folks in here too. So Richard and I teamed up to tell this tragic 1764 Strasburg tale. But first, some background. Let me take you back to 1763. Strasburg is nothing like we know it today. It's a time of the French and Indian War and Pontiac's Rebellion. Multiple raids and attacks are occurring up and down the valley. Fortified and stockaded homes dot the landscape as settlers try to eke out an existence from the land. Strasburg is in its infancy, founded only 2 years prior. It is still the frontier. Frontier traders visit this area for agricultural products, hides, home goods, and newly made pottery. Men such as 28-year-old Abraham Mitchell, son of a Quaker hatter and well-known trader between Shenandoah Valley, Philadelphia, and Fort Pitt, or as we know it today, Pittsburgh. Abraham Mitchell is well acquainted with the Lenape Delaware Nation and consulted in dealings and trade with them. He is also well acquainted with the people and the settlements of the frontier. But something happened in 1763 between Mitchell and the settlers. While visiting Strasburg, Mitchell is accused of a petty act of theft. For this accusation, he is whipped in front of the local population of Bowman's Fort, located near where Route 11 currently crosses Cedar Creek. Two men carry out this whipping. One is 34-year-old John Dellinger, son of prominent local citizen Christian Dellinger. John is living near present-day Spangler's Hall at Borum Spring, 1 mile west of town. The other carrying out this whipping was Johann George Mueller, around 57 years old, farmer and living near Clary, about 3 miles from town. Witnessing this punishment was Rebecca Bowman Brinker, who was 16 at the time, and relayed her testimony to Samuel Kercheval in 1833. This whipping set in motion a chain of events that would not truly be the Indian attack as it has been called for 258 years, but instead a premeditated mass murder that would leave 6 local citizens dead. With no further ado, and I present to you Abraham Mitchell's return to Strasburg in August of 1764. Somebody hit the lights? Please.
Gotta find the light.
They'll get them. Shoot them out.
Start unscrewing them.
We're getting there.
There's like 7 knobs.
This is it now. while someone's gathering the lights, does anybody have any questions? There must be some question or discussion about, I mean, a very interesting story, don't you think? The first mass murder. I'm sorry? The date of the Bible is 1733. 1733, printed in Germany and, of course, brought over by the Miller family. And be sure you look at it. That is the book we're talking about. And one of the questions I think is funny. You got to always have something funny. I feel sorry for the cat. But why do you put the coals in the Bible and then throw the cat on it? Why, if you want to burn the cabin, why don't you just throw the coals out in the mattress or in the hay or do what's your
Hey, that's one of the things I find very interesting is you have to remember that everybody involved in this story was building fires every day. From the attackers to the Millers to everybody was doing this. There is not a more inefficient way to start a fire than to stick it in a large folio Bible and throw a dead cat on it. They just don't burn well. I think it was a message. The coal was put into 2 Samuel, which is a very dark chapter in the Bible of betrayal and murder. I think that was a message from Abraham Mitchell to whoever found it on what he had done and what he had brought here.
And so when they do this flogging, I mean, they tie them up to a post and whip them, and I mean, it's a pretty horrible thing.
Yeah.
So your thought is that Abraham Mitchell had his back sore enough that he retaliated.
We don't really know for sure. It calls it a whipping, and it was carried out by two people. Rebecca Brinker was fortunate enough to where we have direct eyewitness statements from this, and she witnessed it. But it doesn't say whether it was 10 lashes, 100 lashes. It's one of the things to remember too is these are long distances being traveled through very wild territory. This was an awful long time for Abraham Mitchell to hold a grudge, and a long distance to hold this grudge. And it was not at all safe for him to come back here in the manner in which he came back here. So I think the petty act of theft of which he was accused is part of the story. I think there's more to it that we may never know.
Well, and you think he may have been sweet on Rachel? Is that the, you think that's possible?
That is one assumption. It is not uncommon for prisoners to be taken in these sort of attacks, but again, this was not an attack. But it is odd that she not only survived, but then she also vanished. And one thing that we are missing, and if anybody knows where this might be, we are looking for the Dellinger Bible. It was cited to exist as late as 1996. So it is out there somewhere, hopefully. And that might shed more light on who Rachel was. And there was one assumption that she was a Miller.
What happens to Mitchell? Has he survived the whole thing? I mean,
oh, yeah,
nobody ever prosecutes this.
No, there was no warrant for his arrest ever filed. Now, the authorities, of course, would have known about it in this area, because Major Stevens, who just in 1755 and of Stevens Fort, was the sheriff of Frederick County. And remember, this was all Frederick County at that time. 1760s, he was performing courts-martials. He was an officer underneath Washington during the French and Indian War. And he was married to Abraham Bowman's sister. So he would have not only been aware of this, he would have most likely have been active in the rescue of Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
But no warrants ever been found or any mention in court records of Abraham Mitchell being pursued.
Anybody?
Who were the two that did the whipping again?
It was Miller and Dellinger, the two who were killed.
And don't forget that the Dellinger was killed at Spangler Hall.
Yes.
I mean,
He was
you know,
the first hit.
So they're right far apart, and they went there and killed
Killed John Dellinger first.
John Dellinger, and took Rachel from there
And the baby.
and the baby, brought them to the
Millers.
Miller place, then killed 4 of the Millers, whose graves are 4 of the graves that are in that little unkept graveyard, if you will, that's out there on Beeler Lane. So, I mean, it seems to me, I don't know, I'm just conjecturing, but I think that if Miller did the whipping and
Dellinger.
Dellinger did the whipping, he came after those 2 guys.
Oh, yeah.
That's well, I think
Yeah.
so. I mean,
No question about that.
yeah, you don't really know, but I would think that's pretty.
Copy was hired by.
Yeah, now
do that.
there are tons of trade records of the 3 Mitchells, is what they were known as in the frontier. The father was operating out of Philadelphia. He was a Quaker. He was a Quaker hatter, and apparently the son was not. But yeah, they were operating in that area. Abraham and his brother were doing most of the work out towards Fort Pitt and back and forth through this area with trade. His brother was later killed by the Shawnee.
And these Indians have been pushed west and are on the western frontier at that time.
Yeah.
Fort Pitt and all those things out there. Yeah.
And there's multiple accounts of his particular working with the Lenape, and also with consultations between the British government on trade with the Lenape and what's appropriate gifts and all to give in treaties.
So he brought the Indians with him for this.
Yep.
To probably make it look like an Indian massacre. And if he had killed everyone, if he had succeeded in killing little Maria or Mariah, Rachel, all right. Well, yeah, both
Maria,
Rachel
too.
and the little girl. If he'd succeeded in killing those, we probably wouldn't know this story. I mean, you know.
And there's the great thing is there's a lot of first primary sources that still exist. This was reported in the Philadelphia Inquirer at the time, so I mean it was out there and known. Yes, great question. So I'm glad you asked that.
What is it?
Maria's Run.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. 3 miles. So how do you teach a 3-year-old where to go for help? Well, we went out to the site, and the best thing we could figure is her father or her mother must have told her, run to the mountain, follow the creek. And if you look straight at from where their house site was, you see North Mountain or Signal Knob. And if you follow straight to that, you hit Cedar Creek. And you follow that, that'll take you right to Bowman's Fort. And now Bowman's Fort was said to exist about where Route 11 crosses Cedar Creek now. And it was a stockaded fort. It's unsure that the stone house was there at that point.
Okay.
That's the best way we could figure to teach a 3-year-old to go for help.
But it would be very normal for there to be an escape plan.
Yes.
Because Indians are marauding, and I mean things are, you know, it's a risky place to be.
Yeah, we
so,
just come out of the French and Indian War.
so it's something that you would instruct your children, I would think. But anyway, yeah.
Were the Lenape, were they part of the Shawnee group?
No,
Where were they?
they're Delawares. They're what was called the Delaware tribe, but they were just west of Pittsburgh. That's where they were located. Now they were in the general area of the Shawnee as well. The Shawnee were just to the south of them at that time.
And Mitchell is in cahoots with them because he's trading with them all
Yeah.
the time. I mean, so they're part of his clients, if
Yeah.
you will. Yeah.
A favored client.
Yes,
Were
sir.
they in the area at the time?
No, they were over towards Pittsburgh.
I have reason for this question. Do you know when the Millers acquired that property? They're part of the original Joyce type settlement people?
We went and looked for a deed, but we didn't find the Miller deed.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
You said the date of the Bible is 1833.
1733, yeah.
Sorry, he's making that. Richard,
Yeah, I'm a.
1733. Joyce type settlement was in 1731.
Mhm.
And so I'm wondering, this is just conjecture, is it possible that they brought that Bible with them on the boat across the pond?
Yes,
I
most
would-
likely.
I would think so. Yeah. I don't think they were here in 1733.
No, one of the folks I've been consulting with is a descendant of the Millers, Adam Miller. He's done quite a bunch of research on, trying to find his ancestor. He was estimating from his work, and I agree with him that probably was about the 1750s that they came over. Brought the Bible with them.
Anybody else?
So we have to change our story when we talk about the Bible
You-
at the museum.
Now, as a docent, and let me say on behalf of the museum, and I know our president would say the same, we appreciate greatly all the docents, but now you know the rest of the story. The area's first mass murder. We're not going to change that, but that is I think yes, sir.
Maybe if you already mentioned it, where was Mitchell during the massacre?
Where was what?
Where was he during the massacre?
He was with the massacre. He was with the massacre.
Now, Sandy Ridge that he talks about in the video is out of Wardensville,
Yeah.
just the other side of
Yeah.
Wardensville. So they, that's the way they're going back up that way. And there is Sandy Ridge is pretty well known.
Yeah, that was a
area.
large trade route.
Yeah, in Hardy County.
How is Andrew Abram Mitchell identified as being there for the massacre? Was there a
Rachel.
witness that
Rachel.
saw him?
Rachel Dellinger, who was
She was a
rescued from the getaway attempt.
Yeah, she disappeared after that. You don't find any reference to her after that in this area, or any that I've been able to pin down as being her. But she's definitely not here soon after this attack. Once she's brought back rescued.
How old was she at the time?
We don't know. Yeah, we have no idea of that. We didn't find her birth records. We can't figure out what her maiden name is. Gene Hammond suggested that she was a Miller, but we haven't been able to follow that up anymore. It is also possible that George Miller was married before the wife who was killed with him, and there is some thought that she might have actually been one of his other daughters. But there's no proof, none that we've found. That's why we hope to find the Dellinger Bible and hope that it has something in there. So like I said before, please look. Give me a call if you find it. We looked in that Bible, Gloria and I did, to try and find some sort of relationships, but there was nothing in there from those dates.
One of the pictures showed the Abraham Stickley house. It looked like it's been ruined.
Yes,
Is it still standing?
yes.
Where is that?
It's right at the old entrance to what we used to call Kemstone. You used to go out the other road, make the sharp turn, go down the hill, and went just before you went under the railroad to go into Kemstone. That house stood on the right,
Yep.
and it's actually if you were at Panthers Cove and crossed the creek to the south side of the creek and followed that fence line, it would take you right to that house. But it's on the original old Clary Road that ran through the lime kiln, along the road there. What was the guy's name? I'm trying to think of the guy's name. Can't think of it. that lived there. And I remember playing there as a kid. Of course, I'm pretty old, so, you know.
It was Lucille Stickley's house.
I'm sorry?
It was Lucille Stickley's house. That's the original homestead. It was called-
No, I don't think so. No.
That's not correct. The house that you showed is Lucille Stickley's house.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
It's called Bellevue.
Maybe so. I mean, I don't know that, but
So is that the same one we're talking about? Lucille Stickley's house
The
is
house,
this?
the picture he showed was Lucille.
Yeah, okay.
the house I'm talking about is right on the road, just before you get to the lime kiln. It's within 200 yards of going under the railroad
That's
track.
Stanley Wendell's.
Stanley Wendell's the name I was thinking of. Stanley Wendell, when I was a child, lived there. Those of you that are from around here would know that. The Stanley Wendell
What
house.
happened to the stone to that house? Tom Truman bought it, and they're tearing it apart and putting it on his farm.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, he photographed it. That is the house that is really the house that was in the video. So, but that's where it was, Stanley Wendell House. That's exactly right. Mhm. Anybody else? Neil Thorne, what a job, huh? All right.
There you go.